Very good morning to all of you. Track 3, Futuristic Skill Sets. The topic for the session is Crisis Management, Preparing for Business Disruption. Normally, crisis management or risk management should have been put under Track 1, Risks and Governance. But we have put it under Track 3, Futuristic Skill Sets. You may be wondering why. Consciously only we have put it like that because not only the speaker will cover crisis management as such, in addition to that he will also cover what kind of skill sets are required for managing crisis, what kind of training required, what kind of qualifications, what kind of attributes required. All these things will also be covered. That is why we have put it under futuristic skill sets track. You understand this? So now we have, as per crisis management or risk management, you have to identify the risk. You have to find out the likelihood of occurrence of the risk. If it occurs, what is the impact? Then rating, profiling, all those things will be covered by speaker Mr. Mahendra. So we have with us Mr. Mahendra Dodke. He has more than 15 years of experience in the industry. He has been in the consulting profession with Ernst & Young for the last 13 years and has been working with clients across the globe to help them set up and transform their resilience programs and building teams ground up. Resilience is his passion, and he is a thorough risk management professional who also delves into third-party risk, IT general controls, and the wider gamut of IT risks and controls. He is based out of Bangalore and supports in driving resilience solution in the EY Southern region. With this brief introduction, I request Mr. Mahendra Dodke to proceed with this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind words. I don't know what else to say after such kind words from sir. But when I scan through the room right now, I see a large variety of audience, ranging from people who are probably just starting their career to they have reached the pinnacle of their career, and it's a good sign. I think resilience as a solution, like sir said, it's my passion, and I feel very happy when I see audience from a variety of fields and variety of levels across the industry, right? Okay. Now, when I looked at the topic, when Krishna sir approached me and said, you have to take this session on crisis management, and interestingly, it goes on to say preparing for business disruptions. So the first thing which came to my mind is are we talking about crisis management or are we talking about business continuity? Or are we talking about both? Right? And maybe some people don't know the distinction because it's so interchangeably used in the industry and it's so much abused, I would say. But for sake of clarity, what we'll also do is, as we go along in the session, we'll talk about what the industry perception is, what are the various, I'm not sure, this is not working. Anyways, you are right, sir, the pointer is not working. Anyways. So we'll talk about the industry perception of resilience, what entails within crisis. Very briefly, we'll touch upon that and then move into probably one of the case studies. And more importantly, what are organizations missing? A lot of companies, they have BCP, beautiful BCPs documented, but it's not working. What makes it work? That is what we will delve into. And of course, what do we see in the future, right? With that in mind, and if there is anyone who wants me to cover something else, please feel free to chime in. We can cover those aspects also. If I don't know, I'll come back to you. But this has to be more collaborative. I think I want a discussion rather than a monologue. Okay, so thank you for that. Okay. Benjamin Franklin said, by preparing to fail, by failing to prepare, sorry, you are preparing to fail. Very wise words from him. I think he kind of sensed it much long ago. And this is not just from an individual standpoint. I think this applies to everyone in general. All the organizations that we are working with or that we have seen either fail or succeed, right? And we see multiple disruptions happening. We have recently seen X getting hit. We have seen CrowdStrike last year. We have seen the Bangalore water crisis. I am from Bangalore, so I live and die in that world. But it has impacted, and there, in fact, one of the instances where I was with a client and they said, their factory suffered for almost 3 to 4 weeks because the groundwater just depleted. And they were relying on tankers and loads of it. And you can imagine what would be the situation given that. And the government had banned extraction of groundwater. And you can imagine the amount of water which is required in factories, right? So the company suffered a huge outage because of that. Yeah, we had the Samsung strikes very close by. We also are living in this, currently the trade tariffs which have been imposed by the US. So as you can see and of course the cyclone. I think you all are much well versed with this than me. But I think just to look at this, right, and see the amount of disasters that can strike and the variety of the multiplicity of the disasters and the scale of it has increased rapidly in the last few years. And especially if I look at supply chain disruptions and cyber, for that matter, it has increased a lot in the last few years post-COVID. So what is a crisis? All of you are married, I'm assuming, right? And I'm assuming all of you love your spouse. No? People who don't, I don't know, maybe they fought today. Okay. So imagine you are, your spouse's birthday is today, okay? Or maybe you have planned a trip together to a resort, exotic resort in Goa, because if you keep your spouse happy for that one day, the rest 364 days you will be happy. Or at least live peacefully, right? So you planned for this trip and you took your car and you are having good, probably having some sights about, the resort, the beautiful beaches, you are listening to songs, and this is the memory you are creating when you are going, and this is your business as usual. Now, along the way, your vehicle stutters, and it comes to a halt, all of a sudden. And what happens is, your good memories turn into bad memories. All of a sudden, the crisis has struck. You start, you open your bonnet, you start looking at the vehicle, you get a stare from your wife or your spouse. And you don't know what to do because you didn't prepare for this disruption. Probably it was just an incident. And at that moment, at that point in time, you get a flashback of something that happened a week ago where something similar happened. That was a small incident, but you could have averted this crisis if you would have taken care of that incident, right? And that's exactly what organizations do not do. They don't take incidents seriously. They don't investigate properly. Isn't it? So how do you manage that crisis? So now you start calling your colleague. Can you pick me up? Can you arrange for a vehicle? But there is no cell tower. There is no signal. what do? You start scrambling. Your wife gives you another stare. Why did you not keep the numbers ready? We are wasting so much time. So eventually what you're doing is, you're trying to figure out on the way, because you did not prepare for this crisis or for this scenario, and this risk you could not predict that this is going to happen, and therefore you're trying to manage the crisis somehow. But in the maybe you somehow manage the crisis at that point in time. You come back to your hometown, but you don't have your vehicle because it's gone to the mechanic for a month, 2 months. And that's your downtime. Because your business has suffered, you cannot go to the office. So you arrange for a backup. You ask your friend, can you pick me up, drop me somewhere along the way? And that's your business continuity. But you're not operating at the normal level because probably you are delayed. You go maybe twice in a week as compared to 5 days in a week. Right? And probably you're relying on a public transport. Right? So a lot of dependencies, yes. So the difference, what we were talking about earlier, between a crisis and a continuity. Crisis, you manage that point in time. Business continuity is long term. And then you come back to normal, maybe after 2 months once your car is back. Right? Any questions? Good question, sir. Sir, what's your name?
Gopal. And you're from? Chennai. Hinduja Leyland Finance.
So Gopal, very good question. I think what Gopal is asking is whether this particular crisis management function should sit under risk or the business. The answer is very simple. Who can take decisions? Who can drive those decisions? It has to be the business, right? Your risk management function, of course, it's an enabler. It's giving you the right guidance, the right inputs at the right point in time. But the leadership has to take those calls, right? Okay. So I think we already discussed about this. The word significant is more important here, like I said. If your vehicle was giving you some issues, that's just an incident. But when it actually materializes that and it's a significant impact to you, it becomes a crisis. Okay, so let's look at CrowdStrike outage, and I think everyone knows what happened eventually. But what is more important to know is why it happened, right? Because people didn't, there was someone who was sitting there, he didn't test the patch which was going to be released for that particular product. And on top of it, the second line also failed. You know, his manager, his boss, they just allowed the patch to be released when it could have potentially impacted so many systems. And again, we talk about having a strong risk management practice. I mean, this also incident could have been averted if you would have had strong risk management practice, right? Having those controls in place. And even if the risk materializes, what do we do to bring back your systems? And a lot of organizations, especially healthcare, aviation, especially in the West, they suffered great amount of losses. If you look at the numbers, it's staggering. As per one of the Gartner surveys, almost 47% respondents said that they had a severe or a significant impact on their business. Imagine. 8.5 million computers impacted globally just because of one small patch. I'm quite sure most of the people sitting here, at least some of you would have encountered this in your respective organizations last year. Anyone wants to share their story of how their organization suffered and how they overcame it?
Like the screen went blank. Sorry. Till I was working, and then the screen went blank. Yeah, hi. This is Kala. I'm coming from Dubai. I work for a company called Madras. So in our company, it's an oil and gas company, and then I was working from home, and then the screen went blank. So I was thinking that actually my computer crashed, and I didn't know the reason. Then I was trying to reach the IT. I had the mobile number, and then they said we also don't know, and then but they fixed it somehow. Maybe they had some alternative plans, and it didn't impact the way like what I see in other companies, because IT had they had a backup, and then they managed it at that point of time. Yeah. But there was one more before that, like probably the reason is like 6 months before this CrowdStrike happened, there was a cyber attack. So there was a hacking happened, and then almost like it was like it continued for more than a month. We couldn't actually log in, and then so all the systems were, we couldn't access and things like that. Almost it was like it was on nothing happened kind of a thing. We couldn't work, and then even the month end work, everything got postponed. So probably, and then they fixed all that, and they were better prepared. So that is why they could handle this situation well. Yeah.
We'll come to the testing part. This was a real life testing which happened. Actually, yesterday also, I'm not sure if some of you read that yesterday also Oracle Cloud got hacked. A lot of data got stolen, almost 1.4 million records or something. So maybe if one of you, just after the session, you can just Google it out. Yes, so like I said, aviation industry suffered a lot because of this, and everyone, it was there in the news, right? Almost. It got stranded?
Yeah, they had a fire incident, and then they had to stop operations, and around 1,300 flights were diverted.
Wow. Sorry, I missed that. Probably I was thinking the flight there around that time. Okay. I mean, crazy, no? Just to imagine. I mean, these things keep happening in India. I think last year the roof collapsed in one of the Delhi terminals.
Even in Chennai airport, roof collapsed.
Oh, really, sir?
Newly built,
This the one where the T2, T3. I mean, in India's infrastructure, I can't comment, I think. Okay, so let's look at aviation. What did they do? What were the quick measures they could adopt? Flight cancellations. Actually, this is very surprising, right? Why to cancel your flights? It's a loss to business. But actually, that's a good tactic if you are in that situation. Because if you don't cancel, then people are stranded. Then you have to take care of people, arrange for hotels, arrange for alternate flights. It's better to cancel, give away their money. Right? What else? Passenger support communication, of course. Communication. Oh my God. So I was looking at one of these documentaries. I'm not sure if you saw this. Do you guys remember MH370? The flight that just vanished in thin air. Right? And do you guys remember the fiasco that happened after the incident because the communication was so pathetic, so poor from the government of Malaysia that it led to multiple confusions, a lot of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories is different, but this was more of the government saying something else the first time, the second time they said something else, the timing of what happened when, that also changed, and this is coming officially from the government. And you know, this all happened because they thought they will be able to manage it internally first. And they didn't involve any external agencies. So in the initial few days, they tried to kind of cover up, keep it to themselves. Then they brought it an external agency. And given the Malaysian culture, and there was an interesting read, I was actually reading about this, and it said that people think that, the Malaysian government was hiding and all of that. But honestly, it is the culture which prevented them from spilling out the beans altogether. The cultural, the way it is, the hierarchy, the way it is defined in Malaysia, you have to be contained, you have to keep it to yourself, do not point fingers, all of that. So that is what also led to miscommunication, which probably the Western media portrayed differently, but their own media kind of conveyed it differently. Okay. So coming back to this. So like I said, communication, in this case also, when this particular incident happened, the communication was the most important thing because people would have already planned for their travels, somebody going to a honeymoon, somebody, taking a connecting flight, somebody going to get married. Imagine repercussions. So communication became the key, and that was the most important aspect here. What were the alternative options that are available on the table? Having manual check-in procedures. But again, manual check-in procedures, airlines didn't have the manpower to do it because they never planned for this. They were relying completely on IT systems. So when they wanted to switch over to manual, they had the process, but they didn't have people. So it's very important when you're doing your risk management exercises also, think through all these aspects. What are the supporting enablers needed? What is it that you need? Even if you have to put this plan of action into place, what are the 10 other things you would need as a support system? Right? And of course, insurance. Now, what were the long-term measures? Giving other flexible options, refunds, legal action. Not sure if any one of you know, but Delta Airlines actually sued CrowdStrike in the US. And taking a stock of your current IT setup and what are the recovery measures in place is very important. And doing this regularly, not just after an incident, but doing this on a regular basis is even more important, right? Any other thoughts to share? Anyone wants to share something?
So you were mentioning that alternative, and you are making your risk profile and risk analysis, you'll have to have the backup and think through. So in this particular case, I don't think any other option, because you're not going to have manual systems in parallel, invest money on that, assuming things like this is going to happen at some point of time. So, that's what is my thought, opinion, right? And on the other case, the situation which happened in our company, it's the cyber security attack. So that was more to do with training employees. So how it happened was, one email came and, then somebody clicked, and then that is how they could hack it. So it was the question of more awareness among employees. Sometimes the email comes like from the CEO or CFO, okay, make this payment. So, and then they just logged in, oh, CEO or CFO is sending an email. So without thinking, like, why would a CAO or CFO directly come to an admin person and asking to make the payment? So that awareness was not there. So in that case, that was more feasible, like, okay, you can prepare employees and then you can give them more training and things like that. That was the alternative that could have been. But in this case, I don't think so. You can do anything. Yeah.
Fair point, ma'am. But at the same time, I would say that when we talk about manual or manual check-in procedures or the manpower to do this, you can have arrangements with maybe contractors, or you can outsource it to someone who can do this for you. Have those ready contractually at least. You need to pay them. So see, the cost obviously is there, but is it more than what you can suffer will you suffer in the long run, right? Because you have to sustain your business. You will burn the cash in the short term, but long term, at least your customers will retain that loyalty with you. Okay. So I think earlier we were talking about resilience, and we said whether we are talking about crisis management, business continuity, that aspect is clear. But what is resilience? Anyone wants to talk about resilience?
Ability to bounce back to as close to BAU as soon as possible. I think that is resilience, ability to come back to normal business.
Fair enough, sir.
Long-term thing in nature. It's not immediate, quick action, but how are you resilient for the long term? I mean, it's more of a long term is what I think.
Ability to bounce back and long-term resilience in mind, right? Okay. See, yeah, the way I look at resilience is it's a combination of multiple facets. And what you see, sorry. In my opinion, this is what is resilience. It's a culmination of so many things. Business continuity, crisis management, IT disaster recovery, supply chain resilience, your run books from cyber perspective. So everything has to talk together. If you are approaching this in silos, and we'll talk about this in the next couple of minutes, but if you're approaching this in silos, you're not doing justice. You have to look at all of this together to be resilient as an organization. Okay? So what you see is BCP. I think we've talked about BCP. I'll not spend more time there, and crisis management as well. Cyber resilience planning. See, a lot of times throughout my career, I've seen people come and say, we want a BCP covering cyber also. Now, cyber needs a different specific skill set. It cannot be clubbed under the same umbrella. It needs special attention by specific set of individuals who are skilled to do that sort of work. Plus, they need to be technically very sound. Because how the propagation and navigation of the cyber attack happens, that is known to that individual, and they have to come with that frame of mind to contain the incident. So you need to have proper run books in place and proper planning in place and controls in place, okay, to avoid any such interruptions. IT disaster recovery has been there for ages, and whenever historically people used to talk about BCP, they would mean ITDR. Even now, I have seen a lot of people talk about DR, ITDR, BCP, all in the same breath. But actually they mean ITDR. And by ITDR also they mean only backups. So, I don't know how many of you are BCP professionals here? Anyone? Okay. So for the rest of you, probably, I'm not sure whether you're aware or not, but backup is not DR. Please. Okay? Just having a backup is not having a DR. You know? Okay. Crisis communication, we spoke. Emergency response. Now, what is emergency response? Any organization, I think, sir, you said Heathrow fire incident happened, right? The first thing that they did will be to douse the fire. That is emergency response. Safety of people, safety of site. That is emergency response. Scenario-based planning. Now, this happens, sometimes. So historically, scenario-based planning would be like, you create a BCP for fire, create a BCP for floods, for cyclone. Gone are those days. Nobody does that. If they are doing, I will not recommend doing it that way. Because, first of all, it's too cumbersome. It's pointless. And it doesn't add any value. Okay? Scenario-based planning, nowadays people are using it more of post-incident or post-crisis measure. A lot of people came to us and said, post-COVID, we want to create a COVID-specific, pandemic-specific BCP. I said, sir, that had happened once. Maybe it may not happen for another 20 years, but TK, we'll create something for you. But typically, we don't recommend this, and we have a different approach for this. Run books, I think we spoke about. Run books, again, just one clarity in terms of the nomenclature. People say DR plans, run book, playbook. One and all the same thing? No. DR plans, bit high level. Run books, very operational. Operational, step-by-step steps. Log into this server, connect to this particular server, firewall connection, log into this particular ID, AD, credentials. All of that is your run book. Okay? So yes, the most important thing that I wanted to bring to you, what are we missing? How do we make the organization BCP or resilience more robust? This is the only and the most important thing. Whatever I say after this may not hold that much of value, but this is the most important. If this is not there, nothing's going to happen. However, how much ever beautiful documents, processes you create, you develop, nothing's going to happen. If leadership is not involved, is not committed, I have seen most of the organizations fail on this front. They do well on the other aspects. So what should the organizations do? Or what should the leadership do? One of my clients, I have seen their... so we started this project, it was supposed to be a 3-year project. Okay? We were supposed to cover all their geographies, all manufacturing sites. It was a pharma company. We were supposed to cover all their manufacturing sites over a period of 3 years, their corporate offices, everything. The project itself took 6 years. We covered only 60% of the scope, and the client said, shut it down. We don't want it. And you know what was the reason? The leadership kept changing. I mean, the project sponsor, in a span of 5 years, we had 4 project sponsors. And nobody wanted to own it up. Because it was so difficult to drive that conversation every time, starting from scratch. We had to explain to the management what the previous management had as a vision, where they wanted to take this program. was a nightmare. So if you don't have leadership commitment, if you don't have that vision, it's never going to be successful. Because those are the ones who will keep pushing you further, right? And they are the ones who will budget for this program. If you don't have the project sponsors, nothing's going to happen. And that's why I think one of the questions which you were asking, trying to tie this back to that, your governance, if it is not strong, the entire program collapses. It's not even a program, then it's a one-off project. Right? Resilience always has to be a program, not a one-off project, because taking it up as a project doesn't help. Because then it's a paper tiger. You can just create the paper, get it signed off, keep it in your shelf, and then never open it. This particular thing works only if it is a live document. Okay? I think you all know why I have written this. You all are risk professionals. You know better than me what it takes to. But what is important here is to recognize the second point, right? Recognize the limitations of your BCP. The risk appetite of an organization, you cannot say, let's say if it's a small, medium scale manufacturing unit or organization, and you say, I will create one more factory. Is that a BCP? Actually, one of my clients said that. They said, we want to be resilient by design. We will open one more factory. I said, sir, your call. If you want to invest, totally your call. I don't know, sir. If they have deep pockets, they will. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you need to know what is the risk appetite of the organization. If you do not know that, and you do not know what is the limitation of your BCP, one of the clients, they were so good in their planning. They knew the limitation of their BCP. The person who was driving this particular program, he exactly knew where he wanted to be. And he asked us to take him along and reach that journey, reach that destination. He had a clear image. This is how I wanted my program to be. These should be the people who should be driving this. Because he knew his organization well and he could navigate internally also. So that is very important when you're choosing people to drive your entire BCM program or your resilience program. Because if you do not appoint the right set of people who do not have a say in the organization, it's not going to work. People, there are the other company I was talking about, which was a Panchvarshiya Yojana, like a 5-year plan. That company, they appointed some, mid to low level executive as the BCM controller for the organization. Uska koi sunta hi nahi tha. No one would listen to him. He had no representation anywhere. People will do discussions without him. So there's no point in having individuals who do not have. Sorry, sir, you want to share something? Some inside joke maybe. So, there's no point in appointing such people who do not have that say. Also, not just individuals. There are companies which have multiple business units. They will appoint some business unit to take the ownership of this program, but their revenue wise, maybe they are like 5% of the entire company's revenue, or not even 1%. And they set up this program under them, and it never works. So a good example was one of my other clients, they wanted to know, once we created the BCP for them, they said, can you tell me, you do an assessment and you tell me which are the risk scenarios which will be covered by this BCP. And you please call that out. Whatever is not getting covered, I will take a sign off from my executive council. I said, good, works for us. And I think that's the beauty of this. People who are appointed for these, driving these programs, they need to be visionaries at least. That's what I feel. They need to be clear in their head what they want. Oh, people, of course, are the assets. Like I think we just touched upon this. If you appoint the right people, your program is successful. If you appoint XYZ person, Bhagwan Malik hai. So, training your people is very important. And testing them is also important. Because a lot of people may be dozing off during trainings or attend trainings just for the sake of it, because they will get some credits or they will get some appraisals because it's their KPI, KRA, whatever. But if you're not testing them, it's pointless. We conduct a lot of these drills for organizations where we have institutionalized the PCM program. And we know that the person who has been appointed for this role, we have trained the person thousands of times. But you know what happens? Mahendra, you only drive this training. Please come. Mahendra, you only do this drill. It does not help. If you are always relying on a third party or external vendor or some XYZ person, even though the person has been appointed for that particular role, it does not help. So you need to start doing things on your own internally. Otherwise, it will be like a project. Succession planning. A lot of companies don't do this at the leadership level. One of the clients asked me when we were talking about this entire, there should be backup and all of that, primary, secondary backup of the individuals. And he said, what about the CEO? I said, good point, I don't have an answer for that. But a lot of organizations, they typically will have either a COO or a CFO, someone or the other, and they will also ensure when people are traveling for important business meetings, two of them do not take the same flight. Because if something, God forbid, something happens, then your company is doomed. Right? Succession planning is important if you have not done it. Scenario agnostic, I think we spoke about, just 5 minutes back, we spoke about this particular thing where we said scenario-based plans and all of that, and I said it doesn't work. The reason is this, because nowadays people plan for scenario agnostic approach. What I mean is, call out what are scenarios will your BCP cover, focus on what is gonna be unavailable. What is the key to your business? Focus on that. Is it people? I come from EY, people is the only asset we have. So we focus only on people. If it is manufacturing, focus on your site. Focus on your warehouses. Focus on your supply chain. Leave everything aside. The threat actor does not matter. What matters is what is it that is going to be impacted, which runs your business. You remember the case we mentioned earlier, when you're going on a vacation with your family, your car is your key enabler. If it is not there, you cannot go to your office on time. You cannot take your wife on a drive. So both professionally, personally, that is the most important asset that you have. So focus has to be on recovering the key assets rather than everything else. And that is how you should plan your BCP. One other thing is what contributes heavily to your BCP, to your business. Some of the organizations, I'll not say everyone, but because a lot of organizations have multiple business units and everything, especially the larger ones, and they would say, you create BCP for everything, all the processes. But why should we do that? It's not needed. Pick only what is the most important single revenue earner for you, or majority of the revenue comes from that business unit. Stick to that. You need not create a whole mammoth BCP which is unmanageable, unnecessary, doesn't add any value. What is the point of creating BCP for a marketing function? I hope there are no marketing professionals here, and don't get offended and don't quote me outside of this room. But all I'm saying is focus on what is the key. Rest you leave everything aside. If it is a marketing company, then yes. But if it's an IT company, okay. Integration and coordination. I think we spoke about this some time back when I was showing you that honeycomb diagram. There were so many pillars associated with each other. If they're not talking to each other, your BCP is futile. A lot of companies, how they approach BCP is IT function. The CIO says, I want a BCP. BCP meaning ITDR. I want ITDR. When I ask this question, how do you arrive the RTOs? I hope everyone knows what is an RTO. Recovery time objective, within which your organization or processes or application needs to recover. What is your RTO? They will say, yeah, you derive RTO. I said, sir, who will sign off? They'll say the application manager will sign. I said, does he understand the business? And the answer is no. So you have to have a methodical approach to this. You cannot go in reverse engineering. नहीं होता है इसमें. You cannot do a reverse engineering. You cannot have an ITDR first and then create BCP on top of it. Business process doesn't work that way. You need to have business RTOs first. Derive your application RTOs from that, not the other way around.
It says in big organization, obviously they can go what you are saying, but at mid level it is cost involving. Secondly, IT will be treated as a scapegoat. अरे ये नीचे I mean system down हो गया, अरे IT की गलती है यार, IT ऐसा है, नहीं हो रहा है organization. So they take it as a scapegoat, and for time being, like they let businesses to suffer. Not that big, but yes, this is what at mid level or small level I am talking about. Like not the big corporates like Reliance, Adani and all. No, mid level, yes, they do allow. So how to promote or how to push that you should have a BCP in your system, or how much would be your cost benefit analysis for that. Those are activities which again as an auditors we are supposed to do, right?
A good point actually, what you mentioned. For small and medium organization, the primary challenge is to survive somehow, right? Businesses are too often focused on the day-to-day, business as usual, because sales is probably not up to mark. So push people, get more business, operations efficiency, improvement, all of that. That is the focus. And IT takes a backseat, which is fine. What is more important is, in your organization, does anyone even understand what is a BCP? Because having, like I said, ITDR is not BCP. Because, and this is the trap which most of the companies fall into, unless you are a IT product company or an IT services company, then I understand. But if you are into core, let's say if you're in a professional services, or if you are into any kind of manufacturing, EV, having an ITDR doesn't help. No way. It hardly matters. The max you would do is your sales order and POs are getting generated on time. That's all. And your payrolls are getting generated on time. That's the only impact it will have. Sorry, my eyes. Yeah. So, to answer your question, I was coming back to the point that if you have to drive this point in your organization, you need to talk to or at least get visibility in front of the executive team. Otherwise, it does not happen. And for that to happen, you need to know how to navigate your organization. That's the only way out of this, otherwise it will not happen. Okay, I think we already spoke about communication, and because I know we are short of time as well. Tests, very important. If you're not testing frequently, first of all, organizations don't even have a testing calendar. Leave testing, they will do test, and a lot of companies, they do test in the sense that they would just do a tabletop and they call it a test. There was, this didn't happen with one of my clients, but one of my partners told me, and he was working with one of the big Indian insurance companies. And he was so surprised because the CIO got fired. There was an incident that happened. They were supposed to restore the data. The restoration didn't work. Imagine one of India's biggest insurance companies, your insurance data. And the CIO was fired overnight. So the problem here is people take backups, but they don't test it. No restoration testing. And now, because of these cyber attacks, it's more important that the data is immutable. The backups that you're taking. Right? Store it somewhere offsite. Backup ka backup lo. Another thing which is quite interesting here is the complexity of the testing. Testing, I have seen people test, like bring one server down and that's it. That's the testing. I mean, how is that going to help? What if your AD itself is gone? One of the companies, their authentication used to happen via a IDAM tool. Thankfully, one of the security guys, he noticed that they don't have a BCP for the IDAM tool itself. They were planning for everything else apart from the hygiene tools. I mean, I'm so surprised that these things happen in big organizations also, which is very, very surprising. Okay. So what do you need to improve? I think you were talking about having a KPI, KRA. Resilience, it's not even considered an investment, it's considered a cost. That mindset, I don't know how I cannot change. I have not been able to change. I don't know about you guys. If you talk to your organization and you tell me that this has changed in your organization, I will come and touch your feet. Because no no one considers this as a investment. Everyone considers it as a cost, including the CEO and the board also. But if you do not show them what is the return on this on this cost, it will remain this way. You need to show them what is the benefit you're getting out of it. So what benefit you will get? Reduction in the number of incidents. Number of people who have not clicked on the phishing links. Sorry? In the downtime. Yes. So, pardon me, sir?
The so-called, I think I'm audible, so-called the CISO or CRO or CTO or CIO organization should approach board with a risk assessment mode and say that, hey, look at the example which you spoke about, and that's where you need to have an investment rather than looking at it as a cost. They're not being made aware of that, and they don't look into this until unless you get into risk and compliance and kind of fines you might end up paying. I think that's where they realize. That's my view.
I think a lot of board decisions nowadays are taken because of the compliance requirements. Because they are looking at the bottom line. I mean, resilience. See, honestly, practically speaking, they are right. But to an extent, because when the incident happens, right, that's when they are already, scrambling for where is the BCP, and that time the BCP doesn't work because you have not kept it live. And the poor guy who is doing this exercise for the last 5 years, he is fired. Why? Because your BCP is not working, but it is not his fault. Right? So that mindset, I think it is a gradual change. We see change, but it's very, very slow. Staying current with your technologies. A lot of people fall into the trap of keeping the cart before the horse. When they talk about BCP, they would say, okay, we'll buy a tool. But they don't know what BCP is. They don't know that BCP tool is nothing but workflow management. And they will not get any benefit out of this. Right? All it does is trigger BIA, get the results, isko escalation gaya, usko gaya. Some incident is getting logged into it. I mean, it's useful for big organization where it's difficult to manage things and get a hold of it, and you're short on resources, then it's useful. Otherwise, it's not. And of course, getting external consultants is important. You get that point of view, what is happening in other organizations, so that is very important. Okay, so what do we see in future now? We already spoke about this. Integrated approach to resilience. This is what a lot of companies are moving towards. One of my clients approached and said, Mahendra, we are doing something called as third-party risk management in that space because a lot of our activities are outsourced. But, and when we have an ITDR also, we have a BCP also, but all of them are not working together. Plus, we don't have a holistic risk view also, because our GRC is also working in silos. There is one ITSM tool there. There is some TPRM tool sitting here. We don't know what the risk is, because none of these are talking to each other. So can you come up with something which is stitching all of this into one? So companies are moving towards this. BCM tools, I think we have already spoken. AI is a buzzword these days, and I'll cover very briefly what the use cases are as far as BCP is concerned. From a BCM tooling standpoint, it can probably do scenarios for tests, triggers that we spoke about, BIA, just verify whether things are going as per the plan or not. Anything and everything to do with, your crisis management, doing some analysis on historical data, which is sitting there within your organization, doing some correlation and doing some prediction around it. What is the probability of it happening? That's what AI tools are doing these days. But again, the use cases have not completely come to fruition as of now. Involvement of the board, I think we have discussed it at length. And the regulations, so very interesting actually. SEBI, you all know that SEBI and RBI has BCM related mandatory requirements, especially for the financial sector. Not sure if you're aware, but yes, SEBI has for market institutions, they do have for stock markets, for depositories. Similarly, RBI has a lot of regulatory requirements when it comes to financial institutions. EU is talking a lot about DORA. I'm assuming a lot of you would have heard or probably working in this space. That also speaks about resilience for from a digital standpoint for the financial sector. Again, you have Nasema in UAE and all, the Middle East, a lot of companies are adhering to this. Resilience standards. So I think Sir initially mentioned that we are also here to understand people who probably want to grow in this particular field, what type of certifications they should undergo. 22301. Anyone who is 22301 certified? LA, LI? Wow. Anyone else has done CBCP, MBCP? No? Okay. So the basic standard, like for most of the information security professionals, if you ask me, ISO 27001 is what it is. For most of the resilience professionals, 22301. That's where it starts. But if you want to graduate into some level of difficulty, then you have Certified Business Continuity Professional, CBCP, which is from the DRI Institute. Again, if you want to become a master in that profession, then you can go for MBCP, which is Master of Business Continuity Profession, right? This is what I would want to end with. Plan for the worst, but hope for the best, because nothing is in your control nowadays. So the only thing you can do is to do the best planning possible. Lest you leave it, there will be situations which you will not have thought through. Example, COVID. No one thought about it, right? But it still happened. People still survived, and nothing's going to happen. So you just need to be confident. I think all that leadership and the management professionals need to do is to plan it better, identify what the key risks are, and appoint the right people to take those decisions. Okay. With that, I will close the session. And thank you so much for your patience. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Even though time is over, if there are any more questions, you can ask.
Very good morning, sir. This is Sridhar from financial institution, principal auditor, resilience, GRC, and the third party risk. There is one, I strongly acknowledge the gaps and the need for few areas of focus in the master concept of resilience rather than a dissected BCP. You know the words BCP, IT, rightly brought out, and the slide number 15, prioritizing processes over tools, is one limelight. It's a point to be thought by the corporate. So there is one landscape that is challenging, that I feel it's coming up in the internal audit perspective, which also acts as a management consultant during executive briefings, where we bring in out the mindset as well as the commitment, as you rightly brought out. So if you permit, I will put a scenario. It's a small scenario. The business processes or the business of the financial institution, there is a drastic a shift, paradigm shift, where the technology is playing a role, where the business are getting platformed in technology, and thereby the corporate sees the BCP. So I'm mostly, when there is a technology, there is an IT. And the challenges that are faced is there is a drastic increase in third-party outsourcing or a third-party involvement in this landscape. Although the resilience talks in an institutional or an organizational perspective, now there is a middle integral platform that is coming up is the third party, where rightly you brought in the future is one thing that has emerged as a high challenge for the risk management and the ignorance of the operational core verticals, as well as the gaps in the skills in the internal audit. So while addressing as a resilience professional or a GRC professional, we see crisis management is one regulatory requirement that has come up, either it be in UI DORA or the Indian regulatory SEBI or the RBI or the BFIC sector. And there are other standards that are coming up. The challenge what we see is we keep on the count of third party that is involved in a small financial or a big financial, it has come out as, for example, more than 1,500 operators and fintechs operating on various platforms. Now, when we see it as a business, it's an end-to-end responsibility of the institution where we cannot lay over the risk because it is responsible as a management. In this, when we insist for the crisis management, always there is a confusion saying that BCP is there, no? So we asked for the crisis management plan from a business vertical or from the risk management perspective, the ability to see the effectiveness of the crisis management when there is a third party failure. So this third party failure is not digested, or so in the BCP during the audit we created a scenario. BCP is activated. In terms of IT DR or the BCP, systems are participating through the tool, as you rightly said. It's a misunderstood concept. I acknowledge that, sir. We initiated a demo, testing demo, a surprise scenario with the permission of the management is one learning we had. We asked the vendor, there is a 3 days leave for you. You try to relocate to Mumbai, no need to come. BCP is activated. BCP had a participation of vendor to run the BCP of their systems and the liability and onus with the management. And there was a clear dark space where the systems could not proceed. Although these are all exceptional situations where it was escalated like anything, but the understanding of BCP, IT, the understanding of the crisis management in third party perspective as well as is really a challenge today, unable to assess or it's unable to arrive on this. Mostly it goes through scenarios. Yes, a failure, a third party failure inside the business on IT system is a very complex scenario where I humbly request you to comment on this. That was the last slide, so that's why I jumped up. Is the emerging challenge to the audit lead, to the operations, and to the risk management, where there is a dilemma lies between the ownership on deciding the crisis management plan, whether it should be driven from risk management or it should be contributory from the operation, or or is it the audit to say the improvements? So thank you. So thanks for allowing.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a beautiful question, what you're asking. So, sir, to answer your question, it's a multi-layer, there are multiple layers to it, but the crux of it lies in, have you defined the ownership of the responsibilities in your crisis management? And have you even called out the third parties? You know, what happens is, when you are talking about crisis management, there are a lot of dependencies. One is your internal IT, right? The other is your outsourced parties, not just third parties, fourth and fifth parties also, right? If you have not identified, first step is identification of those parties and what they do. That has to be done at the time of your BIA exercise, business impact analysis. If you have not chalked out your value chain, if you have not thought through what those dependencies are, your crisis management, your business continuity is bound to fail. Because that is the first milestone, that is the first step which is involved. You know, identification of dependencies right up to the nth level and mapping those dependencies, right? And when you talk about your recovery times, right, and what roles these organizations play, that also needs to be called out in your BCP. That is very important. So if your vendor says, you know, I have a recovery capability of 2 hours, but your IT says, you know, I will recover in 1 hour, your business says, I want recovery in 30 minutes. How is that even? It's not possible, right? So either your business has to become realistic, you have to make them understand, or you should have reviewed the contracts accordingly to ensure that your vendor is following what you want them to do. Then testing, a very important thing is that whatever you have created as a backup or your, failover plan, not just from an IT standpoint, I'm saying. Let's say if during COVID this happened, right? A lot of companies, they were working from office premises because people didn't have laptops. Now, if you have provisioned laptops, but those laptops are sitting at home and people are still coming to office and working on desktops, what is the point? If you're not testing it, and the testing has to become a part of your BAU. You're getting my point? So maybe partial days you have to ask them to work from home in a week. Partially work from office. Even in your DR, if you have a primary and a backup DR side, the load balancing has to happen between the two. The traffic has to flow between both of them. It can't be that today I have a backup, the DR side, and I will only bring it up at the time of disaster. If that is going to happen, it will never come up. Because you need to make it part of your BAU. Whatever your backup is, it has to become slowly a part of your BAU so that the recovery becomes much more smoother. So similarly, this example that you gave, if your scenario testing does not include your vendors, then it's as good as you're not testing. So your vendor has to be involved in your testing cycle. Maybe at least once in a year or twice in a year. Some of those scenarios need to be tested in that fashion. Okay, I don't know. I hope I was able to answer your question. Anyone else? Sorry, sir, I have taken a lot of time.
Thank you very much. It has been a very detailed lecture presentation. Lot of take-home points. lot of practical sense was there in the presentation. And question and answers right from the beginning, in between, then and there, questions were asked and replies were given. That is very nice of the speaker. As a token of love and affection, I would love, the institute would like to give memento.